Good morning, and welcome to the First Religious Society Unitarian Universalist in Newburyport, Massachusetts. My name is Justin Murphy Mancini, and I am your Director of Church Music. We are living in challenging times. Forces press upon us that suggest we best live in fear, separation, and blame. Instead, we choose to come together as a church community committed to love, peace, and justice. Our core values are authentic connection, courageous action, love, spirituality, and wonder. Our mission and invitation to all of you is to come as you are, journey together in love, act with courage, and transform our world. If you are visiting today or joining us for the very first time, we are especially glad that you are with us this morning. As you join us online, there are links you can click to see today's order of service and hymns. If you joined from YouTube, the links are just below the live stream. Click on the word "See More" if necessary to see them. If you are watching from our website, there are buttons below the live stream. Every Sunday, we say that it is no small thing that we have gathered. This morning, it is a particularly big thing that we have gathered. So let us give ourselves to it. I welcome one and all to our church and our worship service. Thank you. It is good to be together.
It is good to be together, always. Our call to worship this morning are the words of Amy Williams Clark. In this time of uncertainty, a white pillar candle lit with patterns of light and shadow in the background, we gather in this time of uncertainty, full of unknowns, as angst closes in on us, as with a flame that draws us together. With this flame, we cut through the dankness of isolation and are warmed by the fires of our interconnection. For this moment, this radical moment, we find a certainty within the knowable bonds of love and this community. The knowable bonds of love and community, she wrote. There's something I'd like to share with you this morning. You may have seen that is evidence of the noble bonds of love and community. You may have seen that we have beautiful FRS mugs for sale. It may look like a fundraiser, and it is. However, it's actually so much more than that. I want to keep holding it, but I'll put it down. I asked Bruce DeVoe, who designed and made the mugs and organized this fundraiser for us, I asked if he could put in his own words why he did this. And so I'd like to read with you what he wrote in response. He said, and I quote, "It was sadness, really, and fear. Sadness and fear. It was the middle of summer, and the return to meeting in the sanctuary was nowhere in sight. And I missed so many people. And hugs, and words and songs shared with emotion without the barrier of a computer screen. That, along with the admittedly illogical fear that our community was at risk of breaking apart, or that our connection to this beautiful building would be irrevocably harmed. So," Bruce writes, "I explored the idea of a coffee mug project with an image of the steeple so that it might help us maintain connection. I played with the artwork, yet even that began to lose energy as the fall approached and the country was in chaos. However, I was encouraged by Vern Ellis and his Black Lives Matter sign project, and by Bettina Turner and her wonderful It Takes a Village house project, in which I ultimately used the artwork that I had begun for the mug project. Thus, enlivened by the very community I feared losing, the coffee mug project became a reality. I hope, Bruce says, if you choose to buy a mug, you will sip your favorite beverage and reflect with hope on the day when we are all back here together again. He also wants to let everyone know that you can pick one up. Today they make great stocking stuffers from 12 until 1, and he's putting information in the chat now about that. My friends, you are gratefully called to worship. And as Justin lights the chalice, won't you please join me in our chalice lighting words printed in your order of service. We gather this hour as people of faith, with joys and sorrows, gifts and needs. We light this beacon of hope, sign of our quest for truth and meaning, in celebration of the life we share together. This morning, we also light a candle of hope and remembrance in recognition of the COVID-19 pandemic. All those who are struggling with economic security, food insecurity, all those fighting for their health, and all those who have lost their lives and those who love them. We will continue to light this candle each time we worship for as long as we live into this worldwide reality. Each week, we also light 2 candles of peace, representing 2 places on earth that we lift up and remember as a sacred encounter with our world. There are untold numbers of places on earth that need peace. These 2 we especially hold close in this service and through the week ahead. After each candle is lit, we will speak the words for peace in English, Arabic, and Hebrew. Peace, salam, shalom. Our first candle this morning is lit for the earth in the northern hemisphere, where tomorrow it will be that the sun is the furthest south in the sky, and we will celebrate the darkest moment of the year in winter solstice. Peace, salam, shalom. Our second candle this morning is a little different. It is lit for homes and cities and towns across the United States, where since the start of the pandemic there have been increasing incidences of gun violence. All across America, gun violence in all its forms has been on the rise during COVID-19. Suicide, homicide, unintentional shootings, domestic violence shootings. Massachusetts, even with the lowest incidence of gun violence in the nation, has already had 259 gun deaths in 2020. As of the beginning of December, over 40,000 people have been killed with guns in the United States. Normally each year at this time, we hold a vigil, a service, to remember those who have been killed and to promote awareness and the need for sensible laws and gun control. This year, with the pandemic, we're not able to do that. And so we will, in its place, light this candle and take a moment of silence to hold in our hearts and remember the victims and all of their loved ones and their communities, all who are living in pain. After that time of silence, we'll listen to music written by our own Director of Children's Ministries, Mara Flynn. She wrote this song at the time of the school shooting at Sandy Hook years ago, 9 years ago. Won't you join me now in a moment of silence? Amen.
It's just another day. And yet I feel I've lost my way. Can't listen to the news with children in the room. I have a friend of a friend who will never walk again. Unspeakable was spoken, lives and bodies broken, flags are at hand. Degrees of separation break down through the nation. Flags are at half-mast today.
Please join me now in our affirmation of faith. The words are printed in your order of service. Love is the doctrine of this church, and the quest of truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge in freedom, to serve humankind in fellowship, to the end that all souls shall grow into harmony with the divine. Thus do we covenant with each other and with God.
This is the time in our service when the offering will be gratefully received. The generosity of our community is an essential ministry that supports the work of the church to live out our values, mission, and ends, both in Newburyport and beyond. Each week, 50% of the Sunday offering not designated as a pledge goes to a local community partner engaged in important efforts to transform our region. The December shared collection will support Community Action Inc. Energy Program, providing assistance with heating based on household income and size to the residents of the towns of Amesbury, Boxford, Georgetown, Groveland, Haverhill, Merrimack, Newbury, Newburyport, Rowley, Salisbury, and West Newbury. Applications can be taken at offices in Newburyport, Amesbury, and Haverhill. You can check if you are eligible and make an appointment online at www.communityactioninc.org. Below the live stream, there is a link you can use to make your donation online. You can also text a contribution by sending the word GIVE FRSUU to the number 73256. And of course, you can always mail a check to the church as well. Contributions from the weekly offering are down significantly this year due to our online worship format and so your generosity is especially appreciated at this time. The offering will now be gratefully given and received.
This is a time in our service each week where we pause to lift up and remember the joys and the sorrows of our members and friends. So as I share those that have been sent to me in advance, I invite anyone who would like to do so to offer yours in the chat, and we'll share those in a few moments. We start this morning by remembering an important tradition here at this church. You may have noticed we have our wreath of remembrance here. And every year, people through this month come, members and friends, before services begin or after, take a slip of ribbon and write someone's name on it that they are remembering that year. So the names that are up there now are still there from last year, and yet it wouldn't be this season without this wreath. So for all of those people and all the people who you would have written on a little slip and put it on the wreath, we light this candle today. We also offer these memories. We have an anonymous donor who is lighting a candle in memory of all those who have lost their lives to COVID-19. And my beloved Bart Bracken and I light a candle this morning in honor of the strength and the promise of our beloved church community. Paula Francis is lighting a candle in memory of her brother, Brian Slowick, who died in September of this year. Carol and Stan Kilty light a candle in memory of their daughter, Catherine Drew. We also light a candle of concern this morning for Rob Close and his children who have learned that their grandfather has COVID-19. We light a candle of joy this morning for Russ Mead, who was able to give his wonderful evergreen tree to the city this year to be placed in Market Square. It's one that he and his wife Meredith planted and watched grow, and it was Russ's dream to see it lit downtown for Christmas. He has realized that wonderful dream, and we are all the better for it and gifted.
This morning, we share in the joy of Vern Ellis that his son Tyler is back at work after 3 weeks of recovering from COVID. We share in the joy of many people this morning who are especially appreciative for Lee Pearson's music.
We light a candle now also for the wonderful tradition of the Candlelight Chorale, which we will all be gifted with this evening at 7 p.m. or any time you'd like to watch it. And a candle of joy for the beautiful, inspired pageant last Sunday. And then we light one final candle of joy and sorrow for all those things that, although unspoken, are held in just as much love and care. Won't you join me now in a spirit of prayer and meditation? God of so many names and no names, Goddess of the winter solstice, angels of the light, children of mercy, draw near to us now. We have been through such a year. We've been through a year collectively as a church community that has been filled with gifts and sorrows and struggles, frustrations. We've grieved the loss of the lives of loved ones, long-term members of this congregation. And we've grieved that we are waiting to come together, not yet able to do so. And the hardships of the world have been heavy, plentiful, even at times overwhelming. The spirit of this winter solstice is not lost upon us all, for we have known, and perhaps even know this moment, the long darkness. The long darkness, 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 the long darkness And yet, in the darkness, there is a candle, there is a light, there is a promise of the return of sun, of all things good. There is a promise of the return of being together, holding the hands of people we love, seeing our long-lost neighbors and families and friends, gathering to march for Black Lives Matter, for Transgender Day of Remembrance, for gun violence prevention, and all the issues of justice that we are so deeply committed to. Climate justice. These days will return. In the spirit of this complexity, life, love, spirit of renewal, bless each and every person watching, hear their prayers. Bless each and every person related to all of us, our members and friends who are not here, the larger community, and this world. May we find a way each day to experience and receive the blessing of being alive. Amen. Our reading this morning is a piece from Anne Lamott, taken from a longer piece entitled Celebrating the Pandemic. She writes, "We're missing holiday closeness just when we need it most. But even grim, uncertain times hold sparks of love and light. If we are wise, we avoid large gatherings, dinner indoors with family and old friends, services at our mosques, temples, churches. So we lose the joyful and profound rituals and gatherings at this time of devastation when we need them the most. But does this mean we also lose the nurture, bonding, and sacred silliness that ceremonies provide? Maybe we can be fully immersed in the holy, even as we keep ourselves and our beloveds safe. Maybe broken isn't the end of the world. Maybe broken is a new beginning, a portal. Left to my own devices, I am steeped in dreads. But I'm not left to my own devices. I have friends and an imagination. Life wants to keep reminding us of its sacred self, but we have to open our eyes and our hearts. Yes, our hair looks like not great, and we're out of shape, and dislike our mate, and shouldn't have had children. But God, what a sunset. And I so appreciate the roof over my head. There's an exuberant patch of poppies and weeds outside in the rocky dirt. We can't feel many people's warm skin, but we have the scarf that Emmy knit and the cap that Granddad left us, our first toolbox that our uncle assembled on our 8th birthday. Even when we are lonely, hollow, heartbroken, or angry, we can slip through these gaps into what we have always longed for. Presence, not presence. And that will sustain us. Let us rejoice and be fed until we can be together again. 2020. Oh, what a year it's been. I am so ready for it to be over. I didn't think it could get any worse, and then it did. The pandemic, Black Lives Matter, the loss of so many innocent people's lives, the political situation, divisions in our country. Bring on 2021. It has to be better than this. I've heard all those sentiments and more from many people, including myself. I, too, am looking forward to 2021. I am relieved and overjoyed as I watch the first vaccinations being administered, and I cry every time at the prospect that we may very well be together again in person come September and the start of our new church year here in this sanctuary. And at the same time that I am relieved and excited and grateful, I'm also worried. And so that's what I wanted to focus on for a little bit this morning. Because, you see, I know that it's not over, even though we have found a vaccine. And it's not going to be over, even when all appearances might tell us it is. It's not over because people will still be grieving many losses, not the least of which is a year or more spent in ways we had never imagined. A colleague and I were talking only a few weeks into the pandemic, and we were reflecting even then, at the start of April, on the reality that this pandemic and everything else that happened was and is going to affect the life of our congregations and our ministry for years to come. We talked about grief and what it takes for people to reconcile or integrate loss and trauma. And yes, these have been times of loss and of trauma. It takes at least 2 years for someone to feel normal or reacclimated, less anguished after a divorce, a move, when children move out, a death. It's going to take us time, individually and as a community, to integrate what's happened since we last gathered as a congregation in this sanctuary, as of today, 9 months and 8 days ago. Fortunately, our church is rooted in values of authentic connection and love. We are deeply committed to supporting one another through the trials of life and to creating a spiritual home and belonging for everyone who chooses to be here. This is a place where it's going to be okay to feel however you feel and to participate in church however you choose, virtually and or in person, once this new normal post-vaccine world takes shape. We will hold space for you as you take the time you need and do the things you need to do to make sense of all that has occurred. We will stay together as we assimilate the past months, grieve our losses, and grapple with how to live now at that time. We've always done that, and we will continue to do that. This is not going to be a place where you need to hide or act in ways that aren't authentic to your experience. This is a place where we can seek to understand together. Every person's journey will be honored. In her podcast, Unlocking Us, Brene Brown interviewed Emily and Amelia Nagoski. And I'm sharing this with you because I had this conversation with my colleague months ago and had begun to live with this nagging sense of concern as we began to see the end in sight. And this podcast and the book that it's about responds to and validates some of my concerns. So again, Brene Brown interviewing Emily and Amelia Nagoski, and the authors of Burnout, The Secret to Unlocking the Stress Cycle. So Nagoski's work confirms that for us to recover from what we have been through individually and collectively over the last many months, we must deal with both the stressors and the stress response. And that's the key. So the stressors, responding to the stressors, masking, getting a vaccine, all of those things, that's responding to the stressors. However, they write, because you've dealt with the stressor doesn't mean you've dealt with the stress itself. Stressors are the external and internal sources of stress. The pandemic, the things that have happened in the world, illness, job loss, etc. The stress response, and stressors can be small and gigantic, but the stress response is the neurological and psychological change that happens when we encounter a stressor. Increased heart rate, hormones pumping into our bodies, and emotions. And we're designed to move through the stress response and return to a state of homeostasis, to return to a state of calm. However, for many of us, that's not what happens. Instead of returning to homeostasis, we get stuck. And a critical component of why we remain stuck is because we don't fully process our emotions that are related to the event or the stressor. There's amazing research on this, even with animals, and what needs to be done to allow the stress response to complete, to finish. You see, emotions are involuntary. Listen to this. Emotions are involuntary neurological events that take place in our bodies that are actually designed to help us deal with stressors. I wasn't taught that about emotions. I was taught that some emotions were good, some were not so good, some were bad. Good girls didn't get really angry. I was taught that if you're strong, you don't feel certain things. I was taught that overly emotional, that was really not good. I was never taught that emotions are involuntary neurological events. And they have a beginning, a middle, and an end. We must go through all of those stages or we get stuck at one of them. And when we get stuck in our emotional process, which can be for, honestly, as we understand trauma, stuckness can be for generations. But let's just think about the pandemic. When we're stuck, we become emotionally exhausted. It is the first indicator of burnout. Nagoski writes, emotions are tunnels. If we go all the way through them, you get to the light at the end of the tunnel. Now, burnout is a concept developed in 1975, and it has three components. Emotional exhaustion first, depersonalization, where you hear things and they don't really affect you, or you watch the news and it doesn't really settle in, and a decreased sense of accomplishment. Listen to these statistics. In 2019, 20 to 30% of teachers in America reported to have moderately high to high levels of burnout, while medical workers reported rates as high as 52%. That was before the pandemic. I can only imagine how high they are right now. The only statistic I've seen so far during the pandemic is that 70% of pastors say they want to leave the ministry right now. That's not me. However, the point is, we get stuck in our emotional processes. There are three primary reasons research has shown that this happens. One is chronic stressors. We hardly have time to process one before the next is coming on. Another are norms in our society that dictate what's understood to be societal appropriateness for expressing our feelings. I will always remember when I was in my CPE and a mother had just learned that her daughter died, and I was there. This mother wailed. And I'll be honest, at first I was frightened. I then became uncomfortable. Within moments I realized, oh, she understands. What else do you do but wail? And the third reason we get stuck in our emotions is that we either aren't or don't feel safe to express them. So Nagoski's identified 7 things that we can do to complete this stress cycle. And as I explore each of these briefly, and they're in your order of service also, I invite you to hold in your mind right now a particular challenge from this year and see which of these suggestions resonates with you as a way to finish your emotional response to it. First, and more than anything else, is simple physical activity, movement. It can be stretching. It can be opening your mouth wide. It can be letting out a sound. It could be, if you're able, dancing or, but it's not about the intensity or duration. It's simply about moving in some way our beings, our bodies. Number 1 thing to do. Number 2 is breathing, deep breathing. Third is positive social interactions, especially connecting honestly with others who've experienced the same thing as you. That's why support groups and places where people can share experiences are so important in healing. The fourth is laughter. 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 Not to feel guilty when we laugh, but realize that we are actually allowing ourselves to heal, to return to a place of centeredness so we can be of service. Fifth is affection. Can be hugging a tree. I heard someone shared with me that on NPR there was an interview with a person who said that hugging a column, a pole in their living room after their spouse had died actually brought them relief, an inanimate object. Sixth is crying. And what was interesting about this for me is that it isn't to be crying about the particular feelings or the story. It's actually the physical experience. It's the release of the hormones and all of the stress response. So it isn't crying necessarily to even figure out what's happening, but just to allow it to move through you. And the seventh is creative expression. Creative expression, right? Writing, drawing, gardening, arranging flowers. The challenge for most people, they say, however, is that completing this stress cycle almost always requires that we stop dealing with whatever is causing us stress, step away from that, and instead turn to our own bodies and our own emotions. In other words, the answer to completing the stress cycle doesn't necessarily have anything to do with the stressors. understanding the need to finish the emotional cycle, valuing the ways we can do that, supporting ourselves and each other in doing it, those may be some of the most important things we can do for each other and ourselves as we make our way through 2021 and the months to come. Remember, there's nothing wrong with us. If we don't feel entirely happy when things are returning to normal, we may be stuck in the stress response and need to support ourselves and each other move through that. And of course, not all of our days will be difficult. We'll be overjoyed holding our grandchild's hand, joining others in singing, returning here again. Relish those healing emotions because they will also be true. And now we'll hear a message from Julie Parker Amery, who has a wonderful invitation for us and is an example of using creative expression as a way of finishing the stress response, connecting, and healing.
Go. The six-word memoir is an art form that was popularized in 2006 by the editors of Smith Magazine, an online magazine devoted to the art of storytelling. Urban legend has it that Ernest Hemingway created the form as part of a $10 wager with friends. Challenged to complete a story in just 6 words, he wrote on a napkin, "For sale, baby shoes, never worn." Despite the fact that that popular legend has never been proven to be true, it did serve to inspire a global movement. The six-word memoir, after being introduced by Smith Magazine in 2006, is a best-selling book series and has been featured in hundreds of media outlets such as NPR and the New York Times, shared on tens of thousands of blogs. Millions of people have shared six-word memoirs on dedicated websites, in schools, churches, and in six-word memoir slam events. The memoirs, according to the website sixwordmemoirs.com, inspire anyone and everyone to get to the essence of who they are and what matters most. On Thanksgiving morning, the New York Times ran six-word memoirs on the theme of gratitude. 10,000 readers submitted memoirs about what they felt grateful for in 2020. Some of them made me laugh out loud, and some moved me to tears. Here are a selected few. Family reunion in January before COVID. No shame in elastic waist pants. Sunny mornings, a window facing east. Got sober during 2020, stayed sober. Wildfires took much, but we survived. Pandemic baby after years of trying. Water cooler chats with 6-year-old son. Daughter lovingly uninviting me for Thanksgiving. 248 cocktail hours with my mom. Solitary Thanksgiving means no turkey, lobster. I held my dying husband's hand. The backyard haircuts are getting better. The crinkling eye above the mask. As I read and was moved by these six-word memoirs, I could not help but think of our church community and wonder what the assortment of our stories would be. And so I offer this project. I invite you to share your own six-word memoir about the year 2020. Make it humorous or make it poignant. Make it personal. We will share the memoirs on the FRS website. Please send your 6 words to me by January 15th. My email address is julie.amery@frsuu.org. Many thanks and blessings to you for 2021.
Thank you so much, Julie, for leading this important project. It is a deep truth that we find connection and community through artistic expression. We look forward to enjoying and participating and relishing in everyone's creativity. Won't you please join now in singing our closing hymn, which is 396, I Know This Rose Will Open. This morning it is being led by Rhode Island-based soprano Jess Hoytman. Musicians from across the country have responded faithfully to the needs of our churches during the pandemic, and we're grateful for this particular arrangement this morning. And my friends, that rose in your heart, I know it will open.
I know this rose will open. I know my fear will burn away. I know my soul will unfurl its wings. I know this rose will open. 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 I know my fear will burn away. I know this rose will open. 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 I know my fear will burn away. I know this rose will open. 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 I know this rose will open.
Please join now in our unison benediction. The words are printed in your order of service while Justin extinguishes the chalice. May the love which overcomes all differences, which heals all wounds, which puts to flight all fears, which reconciles all who are separated, be in us and among us now and always. I do hope everyone will join us this evening at 7 for our candlelight chorale and on Christmas Eve for the 5 o'clock and the 9 o'clock service. My friends, as we draw near to the end of this year, may your hearts know peace. May your bodies know strength. May your minds be anxious-free. May your spirits be made whole by the connection and the love we share, by being a part of this community, by knowing that we all belong to one another. What a blessing it is to belong to each other. I wish you peace. I give you love, and I offer you gratitude each and every day. Go in peace, my friends, and return again in great joy. Amen, and blessed be.